And there's quite a few articles out, even the IPCC group have to admit that global warming hasn't been happening. Strange that after they lied for years and said, oh, it definitely was, and you're all fanatical, and even heretics, and you're heretical if you argued with them. That's what they said. But this article here is from the Express. I'll put another one up from I think it's the Sunday Sun as well. Good 4-page spread on that one, to do with all the facts as we all know them today, and it really proves that global warming is utter rubbish. But it says eco-taxes are nonsense if the earth isn't warming, from the Express. And it says green taxes have already added at least £100 a year to household energy bills as individual houses in Britain. And successful governments have viewed the threat of global warming and rising CO2 levels as a means of browbeating the public while making them pay for the privilege, I guess, of living and breathing. The odds of global catastrophe are not as high as first thought, so many ask why so high bills. And it says the politicians love cherry-picking science, so-called facts, quotation marks, to support their own agendas. Mysteriously, anything can be produced as evidence of global warming: hot weather, cold weather, wet weather, and dry. Climate change has become a religion, and any diversification from the orthodox view is pounced on as evidence of heretical wickedness. Those who beg to differ about the global warming creed are held up as wicked rather than merely skeptical. You're wicked. Oh. It says, but now new data from the Met Office is at odds with the doomy computer predictions from the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. The new data shows that the pace of climate change has been widely overestimated. They're being polite here, of course, that's Britain. Scientists are admitting that warnings of global catastrophe were way off the mark. The odds have come down, admitted Miles Allen, professor of geosystem science at Oxford University, who until recently believed that we were in for apocalyptic temperature rises of 5 degrees a century. Because that's how they got all their cash. Oh, you're going to roast. Oh, throw money at us and we'll throw money in the air and magically it'll all fix it. The new Met Office figures indicate there's been no significant increase in the world's temperature since 1997. Politicians love cherry-picking science facts to support their own agendas. And it says, let's see how they talk their way out of the Met Office's inconvenient findings. And as I say, it goes on and on about the last 1,000 years and all the rest of it were the coolest of the recent benign Holocene interglacial epoch. And this period is being responsible for all human civilization. At least 12,000 plus years, its end is overdue. So we get cool, then we get warm, then we get cool, and we get warm like it's always been. But there's big money to be made in all this con, and all the lefties are into it too, because they've actually said, and some of the Canadian politicians said that, I've got the links here. She said, she was one of the big ones up in the Parliament for Canada, and she said, it doesn't matter if all the science is bogus, we can use this money for redistribution of wealth, basically. You see? And that's what it's about, the Marxist idea. And of course it doesn't go to the people, it goes to the big international corporations that run all of these groups, including the Marxists. And here's an article too to show you, I mean, you understand this, how many people are getting big grants for scaring you all the time and putting out scary stories. I mean, and I've actually got their own websites where they say that every year we've got to put out scary stories. That's what they say in their own words. Because the people won't listen to us unless we give them scary stories. So they'll take it seriously and so on, and we start getting cash, etc., etc. Well, they're getting billions of dollars in cash, and it's getting spread around all these scientists and so on to give you scary stories. And they're not even good stories. It's not even like the Hammer House of Horrors. There's pretty pathetic stuff. But anyway, the fact is, give you scary stories, and it was really great for their pockets because those guys they've never lived like this in their lives, these guys. I mean, going to sort of science weather was a kind of low-level thing. I mean, if you got introduced at a party, what do you do? Well, I'm a climatologist. But now, of course, it's like, you're a god up there. I've got a special computer that always gives me bad news. You see? So, and then in came the grants. They're living high on the hog. Big money, thousands of them all over the world. Anyway, it's also used as a tool, of course, to make everyone else change their way of living into this new sustainability idea, meaning the poor must die under eugenics, and the lower classes too, and even up to the middle classes because they don't need them anymore. So here's an article from the enviro-eugenicists, And it says, they announce mass die-off, it says. Whoa. This is in a report published in April of 2012 by the Royal Society. Now, the Royal Society is a big front organization too. Started off as a complete Freemasonic group too, that said they would rule science and tell people what was real and what wasn't real. In other words, they would dictate reality to the public through science facts, which of course meant it's all propaganda. But I'll come back with this article after this break. Hi folks, we're back cutting through the matrix, talking about the big scary stories you get, and the ones that are they're all from the top, of course. These guys are raking in the cash, etc. And you've got to understand too, you're run by private organizations like the Royal Society. You really are. Combined with all the foundations and philanthropists, they call themselves, that run the world, all one group by the way. They've planned the whole future. They have planned the last century. They've worked it all through, and it happened the way they wanted it to happen. So they're in charge. They call themselves a parallel government. Anyway, as I say, in a report published April 2012 by the Royal Society titled People and the Planet, and I've got the link for that too, you can download it. The latest UK society calls for massive population reduction and de-industrialization of the West. Well, they've already done most of that, but they've got more to do. Not much left. And it says, however, drenched in euphemisms, the report cannot conceal its ominous undertones. Listed amongst its key recommendations, the report proposes several measures similar to the ones put out recently by MIT, in which a drastic reduction of the population is called for in the name of modelling and predictions. So we'll have to get slaughtered on account of their models and stuff and their predictions. Immediately after the Royal Society released its call for more death and megacities, none other than Paul Ehrlich weighed in to regurgitate his own eugenic fantasies. It says the Guardian reported that Ehrlich, who contributed to the report, eagerly endorses its conclusions in regard to redistribution of wealth. You see, it's a big part of it too, meaning to make you poorer, you understand. Ehrlich is quite upfront about his opinion on the matter, and he says, population and resources multiply together. That's not they lot, that lot, you lot. You have to deal with them together. We have too much consumption amongst the rich, and by the way, the rich is anybody in the lower middle working class, I should say. And most countries are sinking with taxes and all the rest of it, and heating bills and all that kind of stuff. And it says, and too little amongst the poor. Of course, they're comparing you with the Kalahari Bushmen. And those guys were absolutely, completely independent of needing your money at all, up until recently, because the UN rounded them all up and put them in a camp. Anyway, that implies that terrible thing that we're going to have to do, which is somehow redistribute access to resources away from the rich to the poor. So we have to do that, eh? Who's these we, I wonder, eh? It says, how many of your supporters depends on, your support depends on lifestyles, Ehrlich stated. We came up with 1.5 to 2 billion because you can have big active cities and wilderness. If you want a battery chicken world where everyone has a minimum space and food and everyone is kept just about alive, you might be able to support in the long term about 4 or 5 billion people, but you already have 7 billion. So we have to humanely and as rapidly as possible move to population shrinkage. For those who, I'll say that last part again for the harder thinking. It says here, so we have to humanely and as rapidly as possible move to population shrinkage. You understand what he's talking about here? Total mandatory sterilization. He's already advocated this. And killing off people. And by the way, that's why they're killing off the elderly. That's the big push now. Rather than treat the elderly, actually give them little pills to die off quickly. And it's cheaper for them. They can grab their pensions and use it for redistributing the wealth, and all that kind of stuff. Then Ehrlich plays the harp strings of fear, making more veiled death threats. He's awfully good at that. The question is, can you go over the top without a disaster like a worldwide plague or a nuclear war between India and Pakistan? If we go on at the pace we are, there's going to be various forms of disaster. It says some may be slow motion disasters like people getting more and more hungry, or catastrophic disasters because the more people you have, the greater the chance of some weird virus transforming from animal to human populations that could be a vast die-off. He's regurgitating everything that many others said back in the 30s, 40s and 50s that set up these organizations that are still going, that Ehrlich gets funded by. Some of the conclusions of the Royal Society report says the most developed and emerging economies must stabilize and then reduce material consumption levels through dramatic improvements in resource use efficiency, including reducing waste, investment in sustainable resources, technologies and infrastructures, and systematically decoupling economic activity from environmental impacts. And that's, again, regurgitation. What the Royal Society terms systemically decoupling economic activity from environmental impact is actually a rephrasing of Agenda 21's from the United Nations plan to gradually de-industrialize the West, as well as the creation of megacities in which the bulk of the world's population can be locked up to make them more manageable, or what the Royal Society calls the potential for urbanization to reduce material consumption. So you're going to be forced into poverty, folks, forced into it. And by the way, all these extra taxes and so on are all part of that. All the spending money you would have before will be going in fees and food and rents and extra taxes and so on. That's the agenda. That is the agenda, folks. In a statement put out by Planet Under Pressure in the run-up to the 2012 Earth Summit, several scientists call for denser cities in order to mitigate worldwide population growth. When in doubt that UN's Agenda 21 is not the Mein Kampf of our day, one should consider yet another in-your-face confession from yet another certified biocratic control freak. According to an MSNBC article, I've got a link here too. I'll put them up at cuttingthroughmatrix.com tonight. One of the scientists, while speaking about human populations worldwide, stated, "We certainly don't want them strolling about the entire countryside." You know, them, that's them, you know. We want them to save land for nature by living closely together, packed like sardines. Insisting the world's population be locked up within the confounds of megacities, the elite realizes that if the herd is to be properly controlled, walls are needed, thick walls, and by constructing these walls, the masses may be more easily led to go this way or that. Actually, so easily force them that way. Chief Scientist Michael Frothed, involved with Planet Under Pressure, told MSNBC that the answer to population growth is denser cities. Denser cities. If cities can develop in height rather than width, then it would be much more preferable and environmentally not as harmful. People who know anything about history know that the creation of mega cities in which the masses may be rounded up and enclosed is identical to the Nazi principle of the ghetto as a means of managing the masses. Same China's doing it right now. They're moving 200 million people off every year, the lands, and crowding them into these sewage pits called cities. The communists did that long before the Nazis. In fact, that's where the Nazis learned all this stuff. Every student of history may also know what happens to those masses shortly after. Some of the organizers of Planet Under Pressure are founding their plea on the notion that we as humanity have entered the Anthropocene, a new geological era in which humans, not natural conditions, are the main drivers of geological and meteorological processes. Citing the website devoted to the concept, I'll put a link up for that too, Martin Rees of the Royal Society stated at the conference, "This century is special in the Earth's history. It's the first when one species, ours, has the planet's future in its hands." It says, "We've invented a new geological era, the Anthropocene," he stated. This echoes yet another scientist, a professor at the University of Colorado, who in recent times mentioned this new era in relation to a call for population control when he said, "Scientists now speak of humanity's increased demands and impacts on the globe as ushering in a new geological epoch, the Anthropocene. Such selfish and destructive appropriation of the resources of the earth can only be described as interspecies genocide." In addition, the professor said ending human population growth is almost certainly a necessity, but not sufficient condition for preventing catastrophic global climate change. Indeed, significantly reducing current human numbers may be necessary in order to do so. The call for compact cities filled to the brim with humans is part of the United Nations depopulation agenda. Within these proposed megacities, humans will be allowed to use RFID technology so they may be kept in check. The rest of the world, the countryside, as one of the scientists told MSNBC, is reserved for the elite. And that's a fact, folk, because the United Nations, they came out with Agenda 21. So I've said that in about 30, 40 years or so in the States, Canada, and elsewhere, only the mega rich will be living in the countryside. You won't be able to afford it and all the fees. Of course, too, that they're getting people out, even in the States right now. I've got lots of stories I can't read tonight, but getting them off their land through environmental impacts, agencies, etc. and just harassing them with fines and fees until they move. And that's how it's done. And it'll continue that way until people literally get together collectively for the first time and stand up for everybody else that's getting pushed off right now before it becomes their turn. I'm not kidding about that. So I'll put this up tonight too. And this goes on. This is only a part of the report. It goes all through the World Bank and their part in it all, and UNESCO and UNFPA, UNICEF, the World Bank, IMF, Education for All, etc. And it says financing and non-financial barriers must be overcome to achieve high-quality primary and secondary education, which is indoctrination for all the world's young. You've got to have the same indoctrination worldwide, ensuring equal opportunities for girls and boys. And they don't add in those in between these days, so they're rather politically incorrect. Anyway, I'll put it up tonight. And internationally renowned IPCC scientist Professor Mojib Latif now postpones warm winters by up to 100 years. Before that, we said there were no winters at all. Of course, Australia even planned on that, in fact, that there's going to be hardly any rain from now on, and then they got flooded out. And they had built these petty little dams to hold the water. It wasn't enough, and some places got flooded, of course, because it wasn't supposed to rain anymore, you know. Anyway, it says here, after David Viner had now made his famous snowfalls are now just a thing of the past claim in 2000. That's what he said, actually. This is an expert, remember. The always publicity-speaking Professor Mojib Latif of Germany's Max Planck Institute made sure to get in on the act, telling Spiegel only 2 days later there aren't going to be winters with strong frost and lots of snow at our latitudes anymore like 20 years ago. There's been more snow in Canada, I think, this year than any previous year for many years. And elsewhere too. We've even had it in Japan. As Germany reels from its fifth colder than normal winter in a row, which is a record, Latif's words are sounding cavernously hollow. As a result, Germany's fundamentalist, warmest, catastrophe-obsessed blog site, and it gives you the blog site, has gone into the damage control mode and has now conducted an interview with Professor Latif in order to reconvince the public that the threat is still out there, it's real, and that we must remain afraid. Oh, be very, very afraid, folks. And it says in an interview, Latif claims that people have simply forgotten what a winter really looks like, and that's why snow makes us think the winter is harsh. He tells us that also in times of global warming, there can be real winters. As I'm saying, it can be warm, cold, pouring rain, whatever, all works in the favour of global warming. The warming so far with 0.7 to 0.8 and a global average is still small, he says. The natural climate fluctuations can still have their full impacts. It says still small. Before they told us that kind of warming was unprecedented. Latif, anyway, this professor now postpones the warm winters for about 100 years. Well, when you come back, the warming, I mean, it's still going on. I just won't see it. I won't notice it. I won't read in its scales for 100 years, but it's still there. This is the rubbish. You understand all these scientists are using all of their imagination to get political and social agendas through. Very important for the big foundations that fund them. And also investors are seeking way, naturally the sharks are there, to profit from global warming. This other article here I've got. Investing in climate change used to mean putting money into efforts to stop global warming. Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs and their other firms took stakes in wind farms and tidal energy projects and set up carbon trading desks. The appeal of clean tech has dimmed as efforts to curb greenhouse gas emissions have faltered. Venture capital and private equity investments fell 34% last year to $5.8 billion, according to Bloomberg New Energy Finance. And now some investors are taking another approach, working under the assumption that climate change is inevitable. They're investing in businesses that will profit as the planet gets hotter. Of course, they'll get all funding from all these freebies, like Obama's going to another $2 billion out for projects, right? The World Bank says the Earth could warm by 4 degrees centigrade by the end of the century. It could, and then it could not, right? The strategies include buying water treatment companies, brokering deals for Australian farmland, actually taking over all the farmland and the water rights, and backing up a startup that has engineered a mosquito to fight dengue. Oh yeah, a disease that's spreading as the mercury climbs, it says. Really, the mercury is climbing. It's been freezing here. Derivatives that help companies hedge against abnormal weather and natural catastrophes are drawing increased interest from some big players. In January, which is, I'll put a link for that to this company, bought a 25% stake in Nephila Capital, an $8 billion Bermuda hedge fund that trades in weather derivatives. The firm is named after a spider that, according to local folklore, can predict hurricanes. Climate risk is something people are paying more and more attention to, said Barney Schobel, managing partner at Nephila Advisors, the firm's U.S. arm. More volatile weather creates more risk and more appetite to protect against that risk. In other words, they're gambling on things that may or may not happen. Lots of money made in gambling, you know. It says drought is helping spur business at Water Asset Management. The New York hedge fund, which is about $400 million under management, buys water rights and makes private equity and stock market investments in water treatment. See, I said before that 100 years ago, the Royal Institute International said they'll eventually take over all the water of the planet, and you're going to pay big bucks just for a glass of water. That's why you'll have no money to spend on all the things that you might want. You see, you'd be in austerity. And the masters who own all the food of the world, and all the water supplies of the world, and the oil for heating, whatever else it is, will have you right where they want to, as some quivering little slave. And that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. The managed society. Managed. Mind you, most folk love their servitude, and it's getting worse all the time. And then Julie Huxley said that. We have to train the people to love their servitude. And they do now. They actually do.